The flight had landed 50 minutes ago. I knew because I had checked my watch 3 times, and then my phone twice, the way you do when you are trying not to look like a woman who is waiting for someone who isn't coming. I stood just outside the doors at arrivals, my suitcase upright beside me, the pecan pie balanced on top of it in its glass dish, still faintly warm through the foil. I had baked it the night before my flight, the way I had baked it every Thanksgiving for 40 years. Raymond's recipe, the one with the extra splash of bourbon he always pretended was a secret. My coat was folded over my arm because the terminal was warm. I did not put down the pie, and I did not sit on the bench, because somewhere in me I believed that if I stayed standing, ready, presentable, they would come. People moved past me in a river. A young man swept up a woman and spun her. A little boy held a cardboard sign with a grandmother's name on it in crayon, and a grandmother came through the doors and put her hand to her mouth and cried. All around me, people were being claimed. I stood in the middle of it like a parcel someone had forgotten to collect. I checked the text one more time. The one from Brooke, my daughter-in-law, sent 2 days before. "We'll be there, Mom. Can't wait to have you," with a little red heart at the end. I had read that heart 100 times on the plane and let it warm me. Then my phone buzzed in my hand, and it was not a call, and it was not a message. It was a notification. A photo, just posted. The kind the family puts up before they remember to pick up a phone. I opened it. There they all were. The long table in Daniel and Brooke's dining room, the one I had helped them pay for. Candles lit, a turkey golden in the center. Daniel at the head, Brooke beside him, my daughter Lynn, the grandchildren, Claire, with her hair pinned up like a young woman now, instead of the girl who used to crack eggs with her fist in my kitchen. Every face was smiling. Every glass was raised in a toast. And the caption underneath, in Brooke's bright, careful hand. "Full table, full hearts. So grateful for our family today." I counted the chairs. I counted them twice, because the first time I thought surely I had missed one. There was no empty chair. There was no place set, and waiting for a woman whose plane had landed 50 minutes ago 20 miles away. They had not forgotten to pick me up. You do not forget a person while you are posting a photograph of the table she should be sitting at. They had simply begun without me, fully, happily, and let the gate take care of the rest. My hands did not shake. Not yet. I looked up from the phone at the sliding doors, watching them open and close on strangers, and I made myself stop. I would not stand here one more minute, waiting to be remembered by people who had a camera out and still left my seat unmade. I reached into my purse for a tissue, and my fingers found something else first. A small white card, the only piece of paper anyone in that family had handed me with any care in months. Patricia Hale, attorney at law, and underneath, in Brooke's handwriting, "Friday, 10 me. Don't forget." I stood there holding it. Of everything about this trip, the flights, the pickup, the bed I was meant to sleep in, that appointment was the one thing they had been exact about. The one thing nobody had left to chance. I did not understand yet why a lawyer's appointment was the only promise they meant to keep. But I was about to. Let me tell you how a woman of 75 ends up alone on a curb with a warm pie and a stranger's business card. So you understand, it was never really about a missed ride. It began 3 weeks earlier, on a Tuesday night, with my son's voice. Daniel called me at 8 o'clock. And his voice had that soft, careful sweetness it gets when he wants something. I have known that voice his whole life. I heard it when he was 7 and had broken my good lamp, and when he was 22 and needed help with rent. And I heard it that Tuesday, the gentleness that arrives just ahead of an ask. "Mom," he said, "we want you here for Thanksgiving, the whole family. It just wouldn't feel right without you. It wouldn't feel right without you. I want you to understand what those words did to me, because if you have ever been the useful one, the called upon one, the one who is needed but rarely wanted. You will understand it without my explaining. For years I had been invited to things the way you're asked to bring folding chairs. Come if you can help. Come if you can drive. Come if you can pay. But wanted, for no reason but myself. It had been so long I'd nearly forgotten the feeling. And here was my son, saying it wouldn't feel right without me. I said yes, before he finished the sentence. Of course I did. Then Brooke came on the line, breezy and warm. Oh, Mom, we're so glad. And listen, while you're out here, we figured we'd finally take care of that estate paperwork. You know, get everything organized, so it's not a headache down the road. I already booked the lawyer for Friday. We're just looking out for you. We're just looking out for you. I would come to learn that this is the sentence people say right before they reach for something that is yours. I didn't think much of it then. I was already picturing the table. I booked my own ticket that night, paid the extra for a seat with more room because my hip is not what it was. And the next morning I went out and bought a new cardigan, soft grey wool. The kind that makes a woman feel she might belong in the photograph too. But I want to tell you about the years before that call, because that is where the real story lives. Raymond and I bought our house in 1974 and paid the last of the mortgage off in 1998. We burned the papers in the kitchen sink, the two of us, laughing like children, while the little fire curled and died. That house was ours, free and clear, 4 bedrooms and a garden, and a porch where Raymond drank his coffee until the morning he didn't wake up to drink it. After he passed, the house was just mine. My name, my deed, the one thing in this world that was entirely and only mine. And over the years, quietly, I had given so much of everything else away. I loaned Daniel $11,000 for a business that didn't take, and never asked for it back, and he never offered. I paid 2 years of Claire's tuition when money was tight, and gladly, because she was my granddaughter and worth 10 times that. I had my pension, modest but steady, which Brooke had lately taken to mentioning as though it belonged to the household, as though my 40 years of work had pooled into some family fund she was simply managing. And 2 years ago, there had been the surgery. My hip went first, and then, in the hospital, my heart gave everyone a scare, and for a few frightening days I signed whatever a nurse put in front of me. One of those papers named Daniel a simple thing, an emergency contact, permission for the hospital to speak to him about that one stay while I was under. I signed it without reading it closely, because I was afraid and tired, and he was my son. I did not think about that paper again. But Brooke did. In the weeks before Thanksgiving, when she pushed and pushed about the family trust and getting organized, she said something that snagged in me like a thread on a nail. We already started the paperwork 2 years ago, she said. This just finishes it. I had no idea what she meant. I let it go. I was thinking about the table. I should have asked. A wiser woman would have asked. But I had spent so long being grateful for any seat that I had forgotten to wonder what it might cost me to sit down. I would find out on Friday. I just got there early, by way of a curb. So there I was. 50 minutes became 70. The pie went cold against my hands. And finally I picked up my suitcase, and I walked. I did not call them. I want you to know that. I did not stand at the curb dialing my son and leaving messages and asking where everyone was. Something in me had gone very quiet and very clear, and it told me not to beg. I walked back inside, past the baggage claim, past the families still hugging, until I found a small diner tucked between a coffee kiosk and a shuttered newsstand. Tina's, the sign said, the eye flickering. Inside it smelled of grease and cinnamon and coffee that had been on the burner too long, and it was the warmest place I had been all day. A waitress with a short ponytail looked up. Happy Thanksgiving, hun. Kitchen's slow today, but we've got turkey and we've got pie. Pie, I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. Pumpkin, if you have it, and tea. I slid into a booth by the window, set my own pecan pie on the seat beside me like a passenger, and when her slice came warm with a lean of whipped cream, I ate it slowly. It was the best piece of pie I'd had in years. Not because of the spices, because for once, no one had made me wait until everyone else was served. A stranger in an apron had set a place for me within 2 minutes of my walking in. My own family hadn't managed it in 50 minutes, or in 3 years. I found a motel within walking distance, a low beige building with a buzzing sign. Valley Inn, weekly rates. The man at the desk barely looked up from the football game. Room 114, end of the row. 2 lamps with mismatched shades, a bedspread the colour of weak coffee, a heater that wheezed. But it was warm, and it was mine for the night, and no one in it sighed when I turned up the heat. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let the phone tell me the rest. 3 missed calls now, all in the last 20 minutes. 2 from Daniel, 1 from Brooke. A text from my son. Mom, where are you? We thought your flight was tomorrow. Tomorrow. As though I had not stood beneath the arrivals sign for over an hour. As though the photograph at the full table had not gone up while I waited. I did not answer. I unzipped my suitcase, took out the spiral notebook I keep for grocery lists, and the thoughts I never say out loud, and I turned to a clean page. I wrote, I am not a side dish at someone else's table. I underlined it twice, pressing hard. And then, lying back against those flat motel pillows, the real horror arrived. Not the abandonment itself, its shape. The warm phone call. It wouldn't feel right without you. The booked appointment with a lawyer I'd never met. The one thing they were careful about. The pushing about the trust for months. The flying me across the country, exhausted and grateful and soft, to a city where I knew no one. 2 days before a signing. We already started the paperwork. We're just looking out for you. It came together the way a chill comes up your arms, slow and certain. They had not forgotten me. They had used me. The invitation was bait, dressed in the one word I could never resist. The abandonment was not carelessness, it was a softening. Leave the old woman alone on a curb so she's grateful, so she's frightened, so by Friday morning she'll sign anything to be let back into the warm. I had been flown out, set up, and stranded, all so that I would walk into that lawyer's office tired and hungry for any kindness, and put my name where Brooke pointed. I did not feel powerful, lying there. I want to be honest with you, because too many of these stories pretend the strong old woman never breaks. I felt sick. I felt small. I felt the specific, hollow shame of having been so easy to fool, of having wept a little on the plane over a red heart emoji while my son's wife counted the rooms in my house. I cried then, in that ugly, honest room, not for long, but truly. And then, somewhere near 3 in the morning, the crying stopped on its own, and underneath it, I found something hard and cold and clean, like a river stone. I had an appointment on Friday with their lawyer. At 10 o'clock, I was going to keep it. But I was going to walk in knowing exactly what I was walking into, and I was not going to sign one single thing I had not chosen myself. I lay in the dark, and I did not know yet whether the woman behind that desk would be my enemy or something else entirely. I would not find out on Friday. I found out that very night. Because at a little after 9, unable to sleep, sitting on the edge of that motel bed with the heater ticking, I took out the white card and I turned it over in my fingers. And before I could talk myself out of it, I dialed the number. I told myself I only wanted to confirm the time. I told myself, too, in the smallest part of me, that maybe she would offer me a ride, that maybe a stranger would do what my family wouldn't. It rang 4 times, and then a woman answered, brisk and a little tired. Patricia Hale. I'm sorry to call on a holiday, I said. My name is Dorothy Vance. I have an appointment with you Friday morning. I wasn't sure it was still on. There was a small pause. Mrs. Vance, she said, and her voice changed, warmed and sharpened at once. Yes, your son and his wife set that up. I'm actually at the office tonight, of all things year-end filings, and the house is too full of in-laws. A dry breath that was almost a laugh. But forgive me, it's Thanksgiving evening. Where are you calling from? Aren't you out here visiting? And I don't know what it was. The long day, the kindness in a stranger's voice, the warm pie gone cold beside me. But I told her the truth. I'm at a motel by the airport, I said. My family flew me out for Thanksgiving. No one came to get me. I stood at arrivals for over an hour, and then I saw a photo of them all at the dinner table without me. My voice did not break, but it thinned. So, I'm spending the holiday here. I only called to make sure I hadn't gotten the appointment wrong, too. The silence on the line was different this time. Longer. I could almost feel her going still on the other end, the way a careful person goes still when something they'd assumed turns out to be sitting on a crack. Mrs. Vance, she said finally, slowly, would you be willing to come in? Tonight, if you're up to it, I can send a car. I think you and I should talk before Friday. A beat. And I'd like to talk to you alone. Her office was on the 4th floor of a quiet building. The halls dim, except for the light under her door. She was younger than I'd pictured, perhaps 50, with reading glasses pushed up into her hair and a cardigan of her own over a holiday blouse. She had made coffee. She pulled out a chair for me herself and waited until I was settled before she sat. For a while, she just let me catch my breath. She asked if I'd eaten. She didn't rush. Then she folded her hands on the desk and looked at me with a directness that, after 3 years of being looked past, nearly undid me. I'm going to tell you why I asked you to come in, she said. And I need you to understand that I'm telling you because something isn't sitting right, and I'd rather get it wrong by being too careful than right by being too late. She opened a folder. Inside was a small stack of papers, neat and prepared, with little coloured tabs marking the places where a person signs. Your son and his wife came to me about a month ago, she said. They were warm, organised. They told me you wanted to get your affairs in order, and that you'd asked them to handle the arrangements because the details overwhelm you. She watched my face as she said it. They asked me to prepare 2 things. The first gives your son the legal authority to make financial and property decisions for you to act in your place. The second moves your house, your paid-off house, into a family trust that he and his wife would control. She let that sit a moment. They told me, she said quietly, that this was exactly what you wanted. That Friday was just the day you'd come in and sign. She turned the folder a few degrees toward me. So, before we go 1 inch further, Mrs. Vance, I need to ask you plainly, and I need you to know there is no wrong answer. Is this what you asked for? Did you want to sign your house and your decisions over to your son? I looked at the papers. At the little coloured tabs, cheerful as party flags, marking all the places where I was meant to give myself away. And I thought of the red heart emoji, the new grey cardigan, the pie cold on the motel bed, the empty space at a full table where my chair should have been. No, I said. It came out as barely more than a breath. I never asked for any of this, I said. I didn't know what was in these papers until right now. I've been putting Brooke off about a trust for months because something felt wrong, and I didn't know why. And now, my voice failed. I pressed my hand to my mouth. Now I do. I will tell you what broke me, sitting in that office. It was not the documents. It was that a woman I had met 20 minutes ago had looked at me and asked, plainly, what I wanted, and my own son had flown me across a country to a curb. So I would never be asked that question at all. Patricia Hale did not gasp, or take my hand, or tell me she was on my side. She did something better than that, something I have come to understand was the truest kindness in the whole arrangement. She got careful. She got quiet. She reached for a clean legal pad and uncapped her pen. "All right," she said gently. "Then I need to stop and be very honest with you about where that leaves us. Because I won't add one more person to the list of people handling your life without telling you the truth of it." She set the prepared papers face down, away from me, as though they were something that shouldn't be looking at me anymore. "I cannot help them with this," she said. "I was told these were your wishes. They are not. I will not prepare or witness one signature that hands your home and your decisions to anyone based on a story that isn't true. That part is simple, and it's already decided." She paused. "But here's the part I need you to hear clearly, because I don't want to be one more person who tells you a comfortable thing that isn't so. Your son and his wife are the ones who came to me. In a manner of speaking, they're the ones I was working for. That means I can't simply spin around tonight and become your lawyer against them. It wouldn't be right, and it wouldn't protect you the way you deserve to be protected." I felt something sink. "So you can't help me either." "I can do two things," she said, and she said it firmly, so I would not mistake it for a no. "Tonight, before you leave this office, I can put in writing in your own words, dated, with the building's night guard as a witness, that you did not ask for any of this, and that you do not agree to it. That's not a sword, Mrs. Vance. It's a shield. If anyone ever tries to say you wanted this, there will be a piece of paper from this very night that says otherwise." She tapped the pad. "And the second thing, I'm going to give you the name of a lawyer who does nothing but help older people protect what's theirs. An elder law attorney, independent, with no connection to your family or to me. Next week, when you've slept and eaten and aren't sitting in my office at 10 o'clock on Thanksgiving night, you'll go and see her, and she'll help you do this properly. The will, the trust, if you want one yours, with your wishes in it, the house, protected. All of it done right, with a doctor's word and witnesses, so that no one can ever unwind it." A doctor's word. I must have looked confused because she leaned forward. "I'm going to tell you something now that I tell everyone in your situation," she said, "and I want you to remember it, even when it stings. When people are stopped from a plan like the one in that folder, the very next thing they often reach for is to say that the parent isn't thinking clearly, that she's confused, that someone got to her." She held my eyes. "They may say it about you, Mrs. Vance. So before you sign anything of your own next week, the first thing you do, before the will, before the trust, is sit with a doctor and have your mind put on paper. Have someone qualified. Write down, in plain language, that you are sharp and clear and know exactly what you're doing. Do that first. Then nothing they say afterward can touch you." I sat there and I let it all settle, and the strangest feeling came over me. Not triumph, not even relief, yet. Something quieter and more terrible and more wonderful all at once. I had flown across a country to sit at a table with my family, and they had left me on a curb. And here, instead, on Thanksgiving night, in a dim office that smelled of burnt coffee, a stranger had sat me down, looked me in the eye, asked me what I wanted, believed my answer, and built me a shield against my own children. I spent my Thanksgiving with their lawyer. She turned out to be the only person in the whole arrangement who remembered I was a person. Before I left, I wrote it out in my own hand, the way she said, plain words. "My name is Dorothy Vance. I did not ask anyone to take control of my house or my decisions. I do not agree to it." The night guard, a kind man named Marcus, came up and signed below, and Patricia made a copy for me and kept the original locked in her office. She walked me to the elevator herself. At the doors, she paused. "For what it's worth," she said, "the woman who walked into my office tonight is the least confused person I've spoken to all week." A small, dry smile. "Get some sleep, Mrs. Vance. You've got work to do, and you're more than equal to it." I went back to that wheezing motel room, and I slept, finally, hard and dreamless, with the copy of my own words folded on the nightstand. I did not go to the Friday appointment. There was nothing left in that folder for me to sign. I flew home Saturday morning. I had a whole row to myself, and I left the window seat cold. And somewhere over the middle of the country, I watched the land turn from brown to the grey-green of home and felt the first thin thread of something I would later recognize as resolve. My phone, when I finally turned it on, was a storm. Calls, texts, voicemails. I read them on the shuttle from the airport. They had moved through their stages so neatly I could almost have charted them. First, confusion. "Mom, what happened? You weren't at the airport. We were so worried." Then, when I didn't answer, a kind of brittle concern. "Mom, please call. We don't understand why you left. We had everything ready for you." I had everything ready for you. The word ready did something to my stomach. They'd had a folder ready. They'd had little coloured tabs ready. They simply hadn't had a chair. I didn't write back. Not yet. There was someone I needed to call first. Claire called me before I could call her. I was barely in my own front door, suitcase still in the hall, when the phone rang and her name lit the screen, and I sat down right there on the bench by the coat hooks to answer it. "Grandma?" Her voice was small and uncertain. "Are you okay? Mom said you changed your mind and didn't come, and then she said you flew home and you're upset, and nobody will tell me what's going on, and I just..." She stopped. "Where were you on Thanksgiving?" And there it was. They had told her I changed my mind. She had been in the photograph, my Claire, her glass raised, smiling, believing I'd simply chosen not to come. I could have softened it. I have softened things for that family my whole life, but I was done softening things into shapes that let people off the hook. "Claire," I said gently, "I was at the airport. My flight landed at 3. No one came. I stood at arrivals for over an hour. And then your mother posted that photo of all of you at the table. I let her hear it. There was no chair for me, sweetheart." I counted. The silence on the line was so long I thought the call had dropped. "No," she said finally, and there was a defensiveness in it, the reflex of a child protecting the story she's been raised inside. "No, that's not Mom," said your flight was the next day. She said you got the dates mixed up. "My flight landed at 3 on Thursday," I said. "I have the ticket. I have the photo with the time on it. I'm not telling you this to turn you against your mother, baby. I'm telling you because I am finished being a woman whose own granddaughter is told a kinder lie than the truth." I heard her breathing change. I heard the exact moment it stopped being something she could argue with and started being something she had to feel. "The estate paperwork," she said slowly. "The way you say a thing as it dawns. Mum kept talking about the estate paperwork. She said it was just organizing things. She said it was for you." Her breath caught. "Grandma, was that whole trip?" "Yes," I said quietly. "I think it was." And then my granddaughter, 20 years old, began to cry, and they were not gentle tears. "I was there," she choked. "I was at the table." I raised my glass. I posted a comment on the photo. "Oh my God," I commented. I said, "Happy Thanksgiving, and you were at the airport. You were sitting at the airport while She couldn't finish. I let her cry. I did not rush to comfort her, because some apologies have to cost something, or they don't take root. That instinct in me, the one that always reached to soothe everyone else's shame before my own, I held it back this time and let her sit in the truth she'd helped tell without meaning to. "I'm so sorry, Grandma," she said, when she could speak. I believed her. I always believe her. It's just easier. Everybody just goes along with whatever Mom says because it's easier. And I knew part of me always knew the way they talked about you wasn't right, and I stayed quiet. I stayed quiet for years because I didn't want to be the one who made it a problem. "I know," I said. "I did the same thing, for longer than you've been alive." "I don't want to be like that," she whispered. "I don't want to become them." And there it was, the fear, under the fear, the same one I'd felt in the motel about myself. You won't, I told her. Do you know how I know? Because you just said it out loud, and they never could. The people who are afraid they might be unkind are the ones who stay kind, Claire. It's the ones who are certain they're only ever protecting you that you have to watch. We talked a long time after that, not about lawyers or houses. I didn't tell her, yet, what I was about to do. We talked about Raymond's pecan pie, the one I'd carried across the country and back, uneaten, and how she used to stand on the step stool and crack the eggs with her whole fist. She asked if she could come and bake it with me at Christmas. Take the bus, just the two of us. I said yes. I said the guest room was always made up for her, and meant it in a way I hadn't meant anything in years. When we hung up, I sat in the quiet hall a long while. I had lost my son to that family. I could feel it, settled and certain, like a weight finding the bottom of a well. But I had not lost everyone. There was one of them who, given the truth, chose to weep over it rather than explain it away. I held on to that, because the days that came next would test how much truth could hold. The hard nights came once I was home and alone, with no kind waitress and no stranger's office to walk into. That is the part these stories don't always tell you, so I will. The first few nights back in my own house, the fear came for me, and it was worse than the heartbreak. I would lie in my own bed, in my own paid-off house, and I would replay Patricia Hale's warning until it wore a groove. They may say you're confused. They may say someone got to you. And then the cruelest thought of all would arrive, the one that kept me staring at the ceiling. What if a judge looked at a 75-year-old woman who had cut her own son out, who'd flown home alone and hired a lawyer she met at a motel, and saw exactly the frightened, manipulated old woman Brooke would describe? What if my own clear mind, the one thing I had never doubted, was the very thing they'd used to lock the door on me? That is the poison of it. The accusation doesn't have to be true. It only has to make you doubt the single witness you have left yourself. But Patricia had given me the answer before I'd even felt the fear, and so on Monday morning I picked up the phone and made the first appointment. The one she said to make before all the others. The doctor. Dr. Reyes was a geriatrician, brisk and warm, with a waiting room full of people my age and older. She asked me to count backward from 100 by sevens, which I did, though I'll admit I was slower than I'd like. She had me draw a clock, remember 3 words and say them back 10 minutes later. Robin River Ribbon, I have them still. She asked me to explain, in my own words, the decisions I was making and why. I told her everything. The airport, the folder, the little coloured tabs. At the end, she set down her pen and looked at me over her glasses. Mrs. Vance, she said, I'll write your letter today, and I'll write it strongly, because you are about as sharp as they come. Can I ask you something? The people suggesting you might not be competent to make these choices, do they stand to gain if that turns out to be true? My house, I said, my pension, all of it. She nodded slowly, the nod of a woman who has watched this happen too many times to be surprised by it anymore. Then I'll be very clear in what I write, she said. Hold on to it. You may need it more than once. With that letter in hand, I went to the elder law attorney Patricia had named, a woman called Miss Okonkwo, in an office downtown, with no connection to my family at all. And there, over the next 2 weeks, I did it properly. The way Patricia said, the way that holds. I will not bore you with all of it, but I will tell you the shape of what I undid, and what I built. That old hospital paper, the one that named Daniel 2 years ago when my heart frightened everyone, the one Brooke had called the paperwork we already started. I revoked it, formally, and I replaced it with a new document naming the people I actually trusted to speak for me, if I ever couldn't. Claire, when she was older, and my neighbour Sylvia in the years between. My health, my voice, back in hands I'd chosen. The house and my accounts I placed into a trust of my own making. The kind where I keep full control of everything while I'm alive and breathing, and where, when I'm gone, it all passes to Claire. Not Daniel, not Brooke. Claire, who cried at the truth instead of hiding it. I signed it with witnesses present and a notary watching, and Dr. Reyes's letter sitting right there in the file, so that no story anyone ever told about my mind could come within a mile of it. And one more thing. The money I'd been quietly bleeding into that family for years. I redirected it. Miss Okonkwo helped me set up a standing monthly gift to a women's shelter, 2 towns over, the kind of place a woman goes when she finally walks out a door she should have walked out of years before. The money they'd flown me across a country to take, going instead to women learning to take their own lives back. It took 2 weeks. By the time it was done, my armor was on. And that, of course, was when the siege began in earnest. They had spent the first stretch confused, then concerned. But when Brooke discovered, somehow, that I'd seen a lawyer of my own, that I'd undone the old paper and locked everything away where she couldn't reach it, the warmth burned off entirely, and what was underneath came forward. Daniel called first. I let it go to voicemail, and then I made myself listen, because I have never been a coward. Mom. His voice was thin and wrong. I don't. Brooke says you went and saw some lawyer, that you changed everything. And I don't understand what happened. We had everything set up to protect you. That's all it ever was, Mom. We were trying to look out for you. You're not young anymore, and somebody has to... And then I heard it. Faint, behind him, Brooke's voice, sharp and low, saying something I couldn't make out. And Daniel stopped mid-sentence. I have to go, he said, suddenly, and the line went dead. That was the first crack. I want you to notice it, because I did. For one moment, my son had sounded like a man who knew, somewhere deep, that he was on the wrong side of a thing his mother could see plainly. And then his wife's voice reached him, and he hung up. Brooke did not bother with voicemail. She wrote. Her messages were a masterpiece, I'll give her that. Not one ugly word. She was worried about me. She was concerned about the sudden changes. She wondered, so gently, whether I was getting enough rest, whether the trip had been too much, whether I'd been talking to people who didn't have my best interests at heart. And then, woven through it all, soft as silk and twice as strong, the thread I'd been warned to expect. Mum, I just want to make sure you're really yourself right now. These aren't decisions to make when you're upset and confused. If you're not able to think clearly, that's nothing to be ashamed of. It just means we need to step in and help for your own good. For your own good, step in, help. There it was, the cruelest blade in the drawer, and she drew it without raising her voice. She was not going to argue that I was wrong. She was going to argue that I was gone. That my mind had slipped, that my choices couldn't be trusted, that the loving thing, the responsible thing, would be for her and Daniel to take the deciding out of my unreliable old hands. A month before, that message would have hollowed me out. I might have called her, apologized, tried to prove I was fine, the way frightened people do, which only ever makes them look more frightened. But I had Dr. Reyes's letter in a folder in my kitchen drawer. I wrote back 4 words. I am quite clear. And then, because I am not without mischief, I added, I have it in writing. Would you like a copy? She did not reply. Lynn called once, my daughter, awkward and cool, saying she just thought I should know how worried everyone was. How, this isn't like you. I told her it was very like the woman I used to be before I forgot her, and that she was welcome at my table any time she came as a guest and not a delegation. She didn't know what to say to that. She never did. The fear still visited me at night, here and there, but it had lost its teeth. Every time Brooke's word, confused, crept back into my head in the dark, I would think of Robin, River, Ribbon, and of the doctor's letter, and of Patricia Hale saying, you are more than equal to it, and the fear would lie back down. They had reached for the one weapon they thought an old woman couldn't defend against, and I had put on my armor a week before they swung. In the end, they came to me. There is an irony in that I have turned over many times since. They flew me across a country and would not drive 20 miles to a gate. And then, when the house and the money slipped out of their reach, they got on a plane and came to my door, to the home they'd tried to take, to ask for it back. It was a grey afternoon in December when they arrived. Daniel and Brooke, no Claire, no Lynn. I made them coffee, in my own kitchen, in my own pot. And we sat at the kitchen table where I had set their high chairs and their homework and 40 years of suppers. Brooke started smooth, as she always does. "Mom, we're just glad to see you well. There's been so much confusion, and we think if we could all just sit down and reset, get back to being a family." "Brooke," I said, not unkindly, "just done. Stop." She stopped. I looked at my son. And here is the second crack, the one I'd been waiting to see whether I'd get. Daniel could not meet my eyes. He sat at my kitchen table, a grown man of 48, and stared into his coffee like a boy who'd broken the lamp. "You flew me out for Thanksgiving," I said, slowly, so every word landed. "And I let myself believe it was because you wanted me. It wouldn't feel right without you. Do you remember saying that, Daniel?" I held on to that sentence the whole flight. His jaw moved, but no sound came. "And then you left me at a curb. Not because you forgot. You posted a photograph of the full table while I stood there. You left me alone in a strange city so I'd be frightened, and grateful, and soft enough to sign away my home on Friday morning." "Mom, that's not," Daniel started, and it came out as a question. "We were only trying to protect you." He didn't even finish it. Because some part of him knew, and the knowing strangled the lie in his throat. "You wanted to protect me from my own house," I said. "From the deed Raymond and I burned a mortgage to earn, and when I wouldn't hand it over, your wife wrote to tell me I'd lost my mind." Brooke's chin came up. She reached, one last time, for the only weapon she had left. "Mum, these decisions, the lawyers, the trust. You have to see how this looks. You're not in a state to—" I had been waiting for it. I reached into the drawer beside me, the same drawer where I keep the bills, the same drawer where I'd kept my whole quiet life, and I took out Dr. Reyes's letter, and I set it on the table between us, flat, plain, final. "That's from a doctor," I said. "Read it carefully, Brooke. You'll find I'm a great deal clearer than you hoped." She did not pick it up. Her hand did not even rise. Her mouth opened, and for once in her life nothing came out of it. "You'll regret this," she said at last, because it was the only card left in a hand I had emptied. "No," I said. "I'll regret the 3 years I spent making myself small enough to fit the space you left for me. This part, I'll sleep just fine." They left within the hour. At the door, Daniel turned, just once, and for a moment I saw the boy under the man, the one who used to fall asleep with his head against my chest because he said my heart was louder than the rain. "I keep thinking you'll change your mind," he said. "I won't," I said. His eyes filled. He didn't argue. He couldn't. That was the worst of it, and the truest. He went. I closed the door. I did not slam it. I shut it slowly. The way you close a book you have finally finished, and it met the frame with a soft, small sound. And I stood there, with my hand on the wood. I did not cry for the man who drove away. I had cried for him already, in a motel room by an airport, the night I understood what he'd done. What I let myself grieve, standing in my own hall, was the boy from the photographs, the one who was real once, who is gone now in a way no lawyer's letter could fix. That boy deserved to be mourned. The man did not deserve the house. Both things were true, and I held them both, and then I let them go. Christmas came, and I reclaimed it. There was no long table, no posted photograph, no toast for a camera. There was my own small table, set with care, and Sylvia from next door, and Claire, who took the bus across 2 counties with a backpack, and her grandfather's stubborn chin, just like she said she would. We baked the pecan pie together, Raymond's recipe, the splash of bourbon and all. Her hands on the bowl were surer than mine now. Mine have started to tremble, and hers don't, yet. I showed her the trick with the eggs, the way I showed her when she was small enough to need the step stool, and she laughed and cracked one with her whole fist out of pure happiness. Shells and all, and we fished the bits out together like we used to. When it came out of the oven golden and crackling, we ate it, standing up at the counter, butter and steam, and it was the best thing I had tasted in years. Maybe not for the pie. For the company, and the warm kitchen, and the chair I had not been begged into. The shelter, 2 towns over, got its first gift that month, the exact sum that used to flow out of my accounts to keep that family comfortable. I drove it over myself rather than mail it. The director was a tired woman with kind, capable hands, and she asked what name to put down for the donation. "Just say it's from a woman who got left at a curb," I told her, and found her own way home. That night, after Claire had gone to sleep in the made-up guest room, I went looking through the cupboard for the recipe box to copy the pie out for her in my own hand. And tucked behind it, I found an envelope I'd forgotten I owned, Raymond's handwriting on the front. My name, the way only he spelled it. He'd written it before his last surgery, the one he didn't wake up from, and I'd been too broken in those black first weeks to read it the way it deserved, and then I'd put it somewhere safe and let the years close over it. I sat down in his green chair, in the butter-coloured lamplight, and I opened it. "Dottie," it said, "if I go first and the doctors have that look, don't you let anybody talk you out of what's yours. We earned this house with 40 years of our 2 hands. Your name is on it. Keep it there. I know you, my girl. You'll want to give it all away and call it love, the way you always have. This once. Save some back for the woman I married. And don't you ever, ever let them set your place at the back of the room." I sat a long time with that letter in my lap. He had worried about exactly this. Not the particulars. He could not have known. Brooke, or the airport, or the little coloured tabs on a folder in a stranger's office. But he had known the shape of me. He had known how I would give, and give, and give, until I was standing on nothing and calling the empty space love. And so, dying, with the last of his strength, he had reached forward across all these years to put one steadying hand under my arm. "Don't you ever let them set your place at the back of the room." "I almost did, Ray," I told the quiet, listening house. "They flew me all the way out there to set it at the back for good. But I moved it. In the end, I moved it back to the head of the table where it belongs. The pie sat cooling on the counter. The lamplight was mine. The house was paid for and protected, and entirely my own, down to the last burned mortgage page and the last quiet inch. And the guest room down the hall held a granddaughter who'd chosen the truth over an easier lie. That is not loneliness. A table set by a woman who chose it, in a house she fought to keep, is one of the least lonely things in this world. If you are listening to this, and you have ever been the useful one, the called upon one, the one who is needed, but somehow never wanted, and if you have ever held on too tight to the rare warm word from people who only reach for you when they want something, then I need you to hear me, because I learned this the hard way and I would spare you the curb. There is a difference between being needed and being wanted, and you are allowed to know it. When someone flies you across a country for your signature and forgets your face at the gate, believe what they show you, not what they post. The photograph is not the family. The full table with no chair for you is the truth. The heart emoji is the lie. And here is the hardest one, the one that saved me. When they cannot win by being right, some of them will try to win by saying you've lost your mind. Do not let an accusation become a verdict. Get the letter, Get the witness. Let them look as long and as hard as they like. A clear mind has nothing to fear from being examined, and everything to gain from being on the record. You are allowed to protect what is yours. You are allowed to spend the holiday saving yourself. You do not owe your house, or your pension, or your silence to people who saved you a seat only in the picture. Because sometimes dignity does not arrive with shouting. Sometimes it arrives quietly on Thanksgiving night, in a stranger's dim office, in a single sheet of paper that says, "In your own hand, this is mine, and I do not agree to give it away." If this story found you today, share it. Pass it on to a woman who needs reminding that her home and her mind and her whole one life were always, always hers. I spent that Thanksgiving with their lawyer. She was the only one who set a place for me. And every holiday since I have set my own.